morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to our 10 a.m. virtual education class. My name is Rachel, education specialist here at the Topeka Zoo, and today we are going to talk about 5th grade curriculum. Before we get started, as always, thank you to Topeka Collegiate and the Kokari Foundation for sponsoring these classes. Now we are outside on this beautiful sunny day. It is a little bit windy, so I am going to hold my board here and hopefully we can work with the elements as we talk today about Earth's systems and how they interact with each other. I love the 5th grade classes. I love the curriculum for this. This content, there is a lot to it today, so this is something that you might have to study a little bit more in your classrooms and at home with the worksheet that we provide, but I'm going to give you an introduction to Earth's major systems and how they interact in a variety of ways. Now, when we talk about Earth systems, what I first want to focus on is this picture up here. Earth systems are made up of 5 different spheres. And when we refer to spheres, we are talking about the atmosphere, the geosphere, the biosphere, the cryosphere, and the hydrosphere. Now those are some pretty fancy words, but let's break them down a little bit. Atmosphere is probably a word that most of you know. The atmosphere on Earth is the layer of gases that surrounds our Earth. So it's all of the carbon dioxide and water vapor and oxygen and everything that is in the air around Earth. So the atmosphere is the layer of gases. Now the geosphere is essentially what it sounds like, geology. It is all of our rocks, our soil, our sediments, our solid and molten rocks, so things like lava. So the geosphere is the earth underneath us, all of the hard parts like mountains and rocks. That is the geosphere. Now biosphere, bio is all of the living organisms on Earth. So humans are part of the biosphere. All other animal and plant life, anything that is alive is part of the living sphere, the biosphere. Now, cryosphere and hydrosphere are pretty similar. Hydrosphere is just the liquid water on Earth. So our oceans, our ponds, our rivers, our lakes, all of the liquid forms of water is the hydrosphere. Now, the cryosphere is the frozen water. So we're talking about our ice, right? Our snow and our glaciers and our icebergs. That is part of the cryosphere. So when it's frozen, it's cryo, but when it is liquid, it is hydro. So these are the 5 Earth's major systems, and they interact with each other on a daily basis constantly. Now, one of the biggest connectors of all of our spheres is the ocean. The ocean, which is part of the hydrosphere, it supports a variety of ecosystems and organisms. So plant and animal life in the ocean, that is part of the biosphere, even though they are underwater. Now the ocean, it also shapes our landforms. The ocean is constantly moving up and down against the coast. It is shaping the beach lines and the coastlines. It is affecting the cryosphere because it affects icebergs, right, where they float. It affects our glaciers and our solid ice formations. So it is constantly shaping landforms. And the ocean also influences our climate. Now, climate and weather are 2 different things, and I want to talk very quickly about the difference. So weather is a short-term daily account of what is going on outside. So right now in Kansas, the weather is sunny and a little bit windy, which is why I have to hold this board. It could be rainy on one day or snowy on another. Weather is the day-to-day occurrence of what is going on. Climate is patterns of weather over a long period of time. So climate is usually measured by scientists over 30 years. So today in Kansas, it is sunny. That is the weather. But the climate of Kansas in May over the last 30 years could also be sunny. It could be generally 60 or 70 degrees. So climate is the long-term patterns of weather over 30 years generally or more. So weather and climate are different, and oceans affect both. They affect the daily weather patterns through winds and clouds in the atmosphere and how they interact. And they also affect the long-term climate of the Earth. And they do that for a variety of reasons. One of them is that the ocean actually absorbs the heat from the sun. And when it absorbs the heat from the sun, that heat in the water, it evaporates into the air. And when it evaporates, it forms things like winds and clouds. And those winds and clouds in the atmosphere, they then move onto land, and they actually determine rainfall and storms on land. So that is weather. But over time, the ocean affects our climate as well. As you can see in this picture, the oceans, they have lots of different currents. The red arrows represent warm currents, which are usually along the equator where it is warmer. And the blue arrows represent the cold currents, which is usually along the poles of our Earth, both in the north and in the south. And that is colder air. And the ocean currents are constantly moving the warm air to the poles and the cold air back down. So it is constantly moving the air and the water in the ocean. Now, over time, that affects our climate as well. So oceans are a main connector of all of the Earth's systems because it moves water in the hydrosphere and the cryosphere. Plants and animals live in the ocean. Sediments at the bottom of the ocean are also shifted, as are atmosphere gases, right? Water vapor over the ocean gets moved onto land. Now, many other cycles are affected and move through Earth's systems as well. Things like the water cycle. Water takes on 3 different forms, right? Solid, liquid, and gas. Well, the water cycle is constantly flowing water through every sphere on our planet. It goes from the atmosphere down to the geosphere, onto the mountains and the plants and animals that live there. It runs into the hydrosphere, into our waters and into our icy areas if it's a colder location. It evaporates back up through our plant life into the atmosphere. So the water cycle is constantly moving through all of Earth's spheres, as is the carbon cycle. Carbon, as we talked about last week, is an atom. It is made up of matter, and it is constantly being moved through each one of these spheres as well, whether it's carbon dioxide as a gas, or it's a carbon molecule that makes up our bones or our skin or the cells of a plant, right? It can help make up the stem or the roots or the leaves. The carbon cycle is constantly being moved. Now, you guys, our class today is going to talk about how all of these major systems are connected and how humans have a major role in affecting these systems. One of the things that humans are doing on a pretty large scale and on a pretty sad scale is we are doing something called deforestation, which means we are cutting down our trees and other plant life. This is a problem for all of Earth's systems for a variety of reasons. And it occurs in major rainforest areas like the Amazon. Let's say the Amazon, it gets cut down at an alarming rate, which is occurring on a daily basis. Not only are those trees important for the biosphere, for plants and animals, because it provides them the food, water, and shelter that they need, but it affects everything around them. It affects the atmosphere and the geosphere, because by deforesting the Amazon and cutting down those trees, not only do we lose plants and animal life, but the trees store a lot of water, and they provide a lot of shade. So where it used to be cool and wet in the rainforest, with the trees gone, both the atmosphere in the air, it becomes warmer and drier, and so does the soil in the geosphere. So deforestation completely shifts the systems in that area from being cool and wet to hot and dry. Now, it also affects the hydrosphere, and people don't oftentimes think about water in terms of deforestation, but trees and other plants, they store a lot of water in their roots, And when we cut them down, it affects the water cycle. In fact, in the Amazon rainforest in the past 115 years, there have been 6 major floods, 4 of which were in the last 10 years. Because when it rains, these trees absorb a lot of that water. However, when the trees are gone, that water has to move downstream, and so it starts to flood. It also moves that warm water into the ocean, which causes the ocean to get warmer and leads to things like tropical storms. And a lot of pollution from deforesting, like mining and like cutting down of the trees and burning them. There's a lot of pollution involved in that. And so that also affects the water as well. So by cutting down the rainforest, not only are we losing plant and animal life, but we are having major effects on the Earth systems, the atmosphere, the geosphere, and the hydrosphere, where all of the water is, aside from the plants and animals in the biosphere. So you guys, deforestation in the Amazon, one of the main reasons that we are doing this is because we are cutting it down for cattle farming. What I have here, this is a picture of the Amazon. Now, if you guys look, you can see the smoke from cutting down the trees, and you see a lot of white specks. If you don't already know, what those white specks are actually cows. They are cattle. 80% of the Amazon rainforest is being cut down for cattle farms and other forms of agriculture. So cows are literally taking over the Amazon rainforest, and they're used for beef that is sent to other countries, including the United States. We are in the top 10 in terms of one of the countries that gets the most beef from the Amazon. So one of the things you can do at home when you eat meat and when you purchase meat is to support local. Simply buy your beef and your meat from local farmers. Not only are we supporting our Kansas economy, but we're also not contributing to deforestation in the Amazon, which then affects all of Earth's major systems. So I know I just threw a lot at you. This is a very complex topic that, like I said, is best studied one-on-one or in a small classroom. But unfortunately, we do not have that set up here. So I wanted to at least talk about it and set it up for you guys to study more at home. And one way to do that is to practice on the worksheet I have made for you. This worksheet is linked in the comments here. It has a front and a back, and it's talking all about what we just went over. So you're practicing Earth's systems and the effects that they have, both interacting with the ocean and via deforestation. So once you do this worksheet, take a picture and put it in the comments. So what we are going to do now is we are actually going to meet an animal here at the Topeka Zoo whose counterparts in the wild live down in South America and are highly affected by deforestation. This is an animal that is native only to Brazil and who is an endangered species due to poaching and due to habitat loss for deforestation. So I'm going to introduce you to Shelly. She is the keeper of our golden lion tamarins, and we are going to walk over to their outdoor enclosure and talk a little bit about this endangered species. So Shelly, why don't you come over here and we're going to walk over and talk about our tamarin. Sure, yeah, let's come in closer. Yeah. Part of the biosphere. Okay, so you guys, golden lion tamarins are this beautiful monkey species here, and they used to be critically endangered. There used to be only about 200 of these species left on the planet. Now, they are an animal who has been bred extensively in human care, like here at the Topeka Zoo, and now there's about 1,400 of them left in the wild. But even still, they are not safe, and a lot of it has to do with habitat loss due to deforestation. So Shelly here is going to talk about our tamarins and what they are like here at the Topeka Zoo.
Well, hi, every guys. Our tamarins here have it a lot easier than their wild counterparts. As Rachel mentioned, they used to be highly endangered back in the 70s with about 200, and now they're up to about 2,500, and about 1/3 of that population has been raised in human care and released and reintroduced back into the wild. Now we do have 4 golden lion tamarins here. We have Chris and Esperta, who are a breeding pair. And then we have 2 siblings, Floresta and Dorado. Usually Chris is the one that will come closest next to Floresta, who's right here. She is the youngest. She's about 9 months old now. So she's a lot of fun, very high energy, curious, always wants to know what you have, what she'll take. She takes everything from everyone else around her. She's super cute. Floresta, yeah, she's the youngest, and then her older brother Dorado. He is about 1 year and 2 months, I believe, now. And then his mom was actually born here, Esperta. That's her, look at her foot hanging out. Her mom was born here in Topeka, and her dad actually came from California, I think Santa Barbara. And they're both about 5 years old. Chris is a little bit closer to 6 years old.
And how do you tell them apart, Shelly?
Well, Chris is actually very dark in the face, and his mane's a bit darker. And then Esperta is a lot lighter, and she has a much less of like a brown streak on her head right there. Sorry, I don't put my hands too close. I have my gloves on. Dorado, he's a bit smaller, and then Floresta's she's tiny right now. She's very tiny, and the black stripe on her head is a lot more pronounced. It's usually a lot brighter when they're first born, and then it kind of gets a little bit more lighter as they spend more time in the sun. They get more of that golden color.
Wonderful. And can you talk a little bit about what they are eating and how their habitat is set up? I know this is their outdoor enclosure, and it looks like they've got a lot of enrichment items.
They do. So they have an outdoor and indoor. There's a little window they can cross through. When it's above 50 degrees, we will put them out here. As for their diet, I have their lunch right now in a puzzle feeder. It's actually one of those vegetable trays you can get at the local grocery stores. And in there, they have a mixture of fruit, veggies. There's a lot of worms in there for them today as a little treat. And then they have a little, kind of like a meat substance, but it's actually mostly protein, directly made for their species.
And I see they've got a lot of toys and climbing exhibits. Is that all part of their enrichment?
That is. So that's going to help them mimic what they would do in the wild. In the wild, they do spend a lot of time hopping from tree to tree, branch to branch. And so we put up a lot of branches for them, a lot of toys for them to explore, as well as puzzle feeders and such for them to kind of mimic how they would search in the wild, sticking their hands down into logs, searching for bugs or any kind of fruits or anything like that.
So they're absolutely beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about their golden coloring, where they get their name Golden Lion Tamarin?
Absolutely. So there are actually 5 species of tamarin. These guys are our golden lion ones. They get their name from their impressive mane around their face. It actually kind of resembles a lion's mane, so that's where they get that from. And the more time they actually spend in direct sunlight, the more golden they will turn. So in the winter, you might see them as a little bit more like a lesser gold color, but in the summertime is when we really see that orange coat come out.
Oh, that's really interesting. And how old are these guys, and how long do they live?
So in the wild, they can live about 8 years. In human care, usually around 11 to 15. I believe the oldest one lived to about 31. So that one lived quite a while. These guys, both parents are about 5 years old. Chris is almost 6. And then the babies, Dorado, he's the older of the 2 babies. He's just over 1 year old, about 1 year and 2 months. And Floresta is about 9 months old now.
And can you talk a little bit about how often they reproduce at the Topeka Zoo?
They reproduce quite often. There was about a 4-month span in between these 2 being born. And I believe it's about a 4-month gestation period for them.
And how many babies do they usually have at a time?
So these guys are usually born as twins, and everyone in the family will help take care of them. Usually they're only on the mom to nurse, and dad helps out the most, but every sibling will help carry the babies.
Oh, very cool. So these are on a species survival plan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So our species survival plan is something that most zoos participate in. They get recommendations from a board of members who look at the gene pool in all different zoos, decide where the tamarins are going to go to help keep that gene pool diverse in zoos. And so these guys are a part of it. As of right now, we don't have any plans right now for where the babies will go, but eventually they will leave the zoo, hopefully, to start their own families.
Okay, cool. And what do they think of their enrichment, particularly the bubbles?
They are not a fan of bubbles. They are terrified of bubbles. I did post a video once of them and they just kind of screamed at them. But most enrichment they do like. They will interact with it, throw it on the ground. Usually as soon as we put it up, they'll stare at us and throw it right back on the ground. So that's fun.
That is fun. Somebody asked when the zoo plans to reopen the outdoor exhibits. That is something that is going to be made at a zoo director and City of Topeka level, and as soon as they make that decision, it will be posted on Facebook. So keep an eye out, but we cannot speak to that at the moment. That is people who are a little bit higher up than we are.
A little bit.
So can you talk a little bit more about their individual personalities?
Absolutely. So Chris is very brave. He's usually the first to come out. He'll check out the area, and then the others will follow him out. Floresta is usually second behind him. With her being very young and very interested in everything that's going on, she'll come up. I usually have bows in my hair. She'll come up, she'll pull on the bows in my hair. She's very just interested in everything. Dorado's a little bit of a troublemaker. He likes to come out. He'll usually kind of smack at your arm. He'll try to pull at whatever you have in your hands. And Asperita just kind of does her own thing. She likes to stay out of the way. She'll come up to you and eat from you. But for the most part, she just likes to hang out and watch everyone else.
Very cool. And I hear they keep making kind of these chirping sounds. What is that for?
So the higher pitch they go, usually is the most excited that they are. They could have heard you earlier during your lesson. I brought their lunch out and they got very excited. So it's usually the more high pitched they go, the more excited they are. When they are threatened, they will also make noises. But it's more of they will keep their mouth wide open and they will just kind of make a lower pitch squeak towards you. But yeah.
So I guess they enjoyed my lesson. I appreciate that, guys. In the wild, do both mom and dad take care of the babies, or is it just mom?
They will both. Okay. Actually in the wild, everyone will take care that is part of that family group. Now if it's just mom and dad, it will just be mom and dad taking care of them. But if they have siblings or anything like that, or if there's another family in their group, they will help as well. But usually dad helps the most with mom right behind him.
Okay. As I said earlier, there are 1,400 mature individuals, but you said 2,500 total in the wild right now. And I know there is a lot of conservation work being done in Brazil to ensure that this species does not go extinct. And that's one of the main reasons why we have them here at the Topeka Zoo, is to keep adding to that gene pool and to keep their numbers up in the wild. Okay, well, do we have any other questions? Let's see. Oh, we do. Do they ever fight each other, especially the siblings?
The siblings will wrestle with each other. I have not seen any actual aggression between them. They are a very social group, so they usually get along pretty well. The males could start to challenge each other, but we have not seen that, so yeah, so far they're good.
And in the wild, do they have big social groups like this as well?
In the wild, they'll live from groups up to 2 to about 10, so they kind of keep it relatively small. Usually all family, but they will, kind of go to different areas, start their own families.
Okay. And is it safe to go into their habitat with them?
Yes, it is. These guys are very used to us. We can go in, we can hand feed them, we can kind of hold out new enrichment for them to explore it first, anything like that. And we do training with them as well. We can get their weight, we get them on the scale. We can also get them inside crates should we need to move them for any reason, or if they need to go to the hospital for an exam, for a medical checkup, anything like that.
And do they use those long tails to swing on like a spider monkey, or is that just more for balance?
They do not. It's more for balance.
Okay. Alrighty, very cool.
What do they usually eat?
And what do they usually eat? Yeah.
So here they eat a mixture of fruits and veggies. They get sweet potato a lot, apples every day. Their favorites are grapes and bananas. Sorry, they all went inside. In the wild, they will eat lizards, as well as birds. But yeah, usually out in the wild, it's just insects, fruits, everything like that.
So they have gone inside, but this is a good time to talk about how we like to give our animals choices. Will you talk about what this means right now in terms of access?
Absolutely. So we leave them access when it's above 50 degrees. So right now it is a really nice day out here in Kansas, so they do have the option to come outside. Right now they're choosing to go inside, probably because of everyone out here. But they do have the option to go in or out, and then they also have another private area that no one can see right now. It's like their little sleeping den, nest box, whatever you want to call it.
Right, and so just like humans, right, on any given day we can choose to be outside, we can choose to be inside, we can choose to have our own, private alone time. And so that's what we like to do with a lot of our animals here at the Topeka Zoo, which is why on a given day, if you might not see them in an enclosure, well, that's because we want them to have the choice. Yeah. Okay, well, do we have any more questions from viewers at home, Megan?
We have, Shelly, what is your favorite thing about them?
Besides them being really cute, I do enjoy their fun personalities. They're a lot of fun to work with, and they also interact a lot with enrichment. So it's very challenging for me too, as a relatively new keeper, to find out what enrichment they're really going to interact with and what they're going to like.
And I think that's all we have.
Okay, well, Shelly, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about our beautiful golden lion tamarin species. And thank you at home for learning all about Earth's systems, how they interact with each other, and deforestation. We hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We will be back here on Monday with a kindergarten lesson. So we'll see you on Monday at 10 a.m. Bye!